We're alive.
Hello and welcome to the November meeting of the Advisory Committee for Racial Equity, Inclusion and Human Rights. Today is November 25th, 2025. We're starting right at 6 o'clock and I'm sure by the time we get around the table, we will have folks that are online. And for that reason, we will, I'll go around and say our names for the record and so that our secretary can confirm attendance. So Katie Bryden, Leanna Fellis,
Michael Beck,
Brian Burr.
Mark Roth.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I
I don't want to miss any of
Bernie O'Donnell, city manager.
3 strikes.
Emmy Nguyen.
Shane Boys.
Wonderful. Should have given us an icebreaker to take a little bit longer, but we do have quorum.
Yeah.
So we are set to begin while we wait for a couple other members. Can that count as attendance? Yes. That's not sure. Formally do it. We have it for the record. Thank you, Secretary Fellis. All right, the next item on our agenda is public comment. For those that were not here last time, we decided to move our public comment just to the beginning. So we have one public comment time that we will open for 15 minutes. We ask that folks share respectfully and thoughtfully their concerns with us, and we have the opportunity to consider it or discuss at either later in the agenda or at another meeting time. If we go over the allotted 15 minutes, we may reopen it at the end. For those of you, I think we all got the email from David Warren that we will not be taking any Zoom comments because that is currently on hold per the City Council order. So until then, anyone who is in the audience and would like to share a public comment is now welcome to do so. Please state your name and residence.
Oh, sorry.
Nice. And it works. Hi, I'm Jamie Beck. I'm a resident of Bangor. I wanted to bring before this committee, as one of the many committees for the City Council, a message that I got from a friend who is living at the railroad encampment today, and I can hand this around for you all. He received on the side of his tent, without having any communication from the city in person, he just came out of his tent to find this notice saying that there is a date of the 19th of December that people in the encampment need to not be there and all belongings need to be removed, or it will be removed by the city and they will be facing criminal trespass charges. The reason I'm bringing this before this committee is that there has been recurring issues with communication and making sure that people's human rights and dignity are taken into account when communicating, particularly with our unhoused neighbors. This is not a isolated incident. Having had conversations with other friends who do outreach in the encampment, other people received the same notice and lack of conversation from anyone in the city. I don't know who put out the notice, but this was just like the first mention of this happened last night in this room at the workshop. And my understanding from what I could hear of the meeting was that there was going to be a conversation about how to communicate in a dignified way with people living in the encampment, how to engage them in the process of, if this is not a safe space for them to be, what is going to happen with and for them to ensure that they have a safe space to be that is not near the railroad tracks, which makes sense to me, but this is the third or fourth time that we've come across this instance where we're getting notices just handed to people and we're not actually engaging them. There are 19 strategies that
the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness has put forward in how to deal with encampments in a dignified manner. This thing asked, how can this committee help guide and ensure that not just this notice, but on the back of this notice, and I want to
The
resources that are offered on the backside of this notice haven't been updated since 2003. There are people on this list who no longer work for the city. Look up the Alliance is on here. The location for Prescott is wrong. There are other addresses and phone numbers that are wrong. There is a very incomplete list of
like food access resources.
this is not on its phone. And this is what's being handed to people. So
I put notes on it. It's just, we gotta do better. These are people's lives. They don't have much and it's really stressful. And my heart is breaking every time I talk to my friends who live down there. And it's not easy. The solutions of putting the date of the 19th, I understand why that was the date chosen. But even the warming centers, overnight and day centers, are not sufficient for everyone because there are a lot of people who still have trauma in congregate settings, no matter how many of them we've created, which are great. Not every situation is right for everyone. We gotta find a different process of doing these things. We have to find a different way. I know housing takes a long time and a lot of resources, but is there any way that this committee can take a stand, help guide the city council and maybe work with city staff as well of how do we do a better job? This isn't fair. People don't even have a month notice of you gotta find a different space. And this is like the fourth or fifth time in 3-ish years that this has happened. People are gonna keep getting farther and farther pushed out. And access to services, resources, caseworkers, all of the outreach teams. It's dangerous for them to keep going out finding people too. Having to find anything existing. I know I'm probably way over my 3 minutes, but there's, unless you would like to speak, I would take 15 minutes. I won't take 15 minutes. So, yes, thank you for bringing this. Thank you.
Very much appreciate that.
Questions I'm happy to answer too, so.
Thank you. I would like to move this item to under committee business. Can we add that to the agenda today? This stuff? Yeah. Thank you very much. We very much appreciate it. Do you have any public comment you would like to make? I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to.
I was feeling your emotions as you speak. My name is Marvin. I work with the airport. Yeah, I work with Community Connector also. And I first worked as a security at the airport, came to Community Connector. Now I'm back in operations at the airport. I love the city of Bengal. It's been 1 year and a half that I moved here. My wife Mark is from Bradford, Maine. So I love Bengal. So I just wanted to say, in case I have, I love social work. In case there's any thing, I can do. I'm from Rwanda also, Rwanda. And I started an organization back home, an NGO for single mothers, because my mom was single mom. In case there's anything to do free of charge, I'm here. Just call me up and I'll be at your service, whatever that you need help with, free of charge. Help-wise, I'm here. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. You said Marvin? Is that your name?
Marvin. Yes.
Thank you so much. We will definitely call upon you. Wonderful. All right. Let me just see, are you able to email Gabrielle the link? She is unable to. Thank you so much. We very much appreciate it. All right. So, thank you very much for the public comment. Moving on to the approval of minutes from our October meeting. Can I get a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Great. Is there any discussion, any changes that need to be made? Okay, wonderful. Then we will take a vote. We do not have anyone attending on Zoom, so we can just do it by a show of hands. Approval of the minutes, please raise your hand. All in favor? Okay, anyone opposed? Wonderful. Thank you very much. 5-0. Next is our committee business. And so under this, we have the agreement follow-up, and also now I would like us to be able to talk about this new information that was shared now before we get into some of our additional business that we've been working on. And so for the agreement follow-up, we thought it would be a good time to bring up the fact that we had our conversation with the city council, went to GovOps, went to city council, sharing with them our request for a resolve that talked about what the city can do to share that it's important that, you know, every member here feels safe and seen and protected by a police force that cares about their citizenship and cares about rather that they're in a Bangor regardless of status. And so, as you may remember, that went through GovOps and was voted down at the city meeting in October. Since then, the way that we, and I'm saying this out loud and I would love, you know, if anybody remembers differently, decided that it might be in our best interest to share this information or this request with the city manager and actually have it go to the city manager to say, okay, if as of a resolve, yes, doesn't actually do anything to further what we care about, which is basically that our city manager, our city staff, our police department, all of those departments that work for the city care that any city person living in the city is welcome and accepted and safe here. Does it make more sense for that to be something that you could find in writing? Because that came up a lot. Like the reason that we're pushing this forward is because we want to have it in writing. We want someone to be able to say, oh my goodness, you know, I feel like ICE is in Bangor or these decisions are being made and I feel out of the loop. Aren't I supposed to be in the loop? Is there actually no written language anywhere that says, actually, yes, you are. And these are the exact steps that you're supposed to take when we come into this situation. So if we were to take it to the city manager, I wanted to open it up to Courtney, if you could give us some feedback on what, well, one, Carolyn might be looking for with this discussion and how we might be able to support that. And then I would also love to hear your feedback, counselor, if there's any feedback that you have in terms of, I think we need as a committee need to decide, like, is this something we still care about? Do we want to continue pushing this mantle and pushing it forward to be something of an ordinance or an act that we can have on the city books for everyone to see? Or is it something more internal that our staff is trained at, and what actually is the best use of our time and resources in accomplishing what our end goal is? So Courtney, are you comfortable sharing just if you've talked to Carolyn, what her feedback was, what that might look like and what she's looking for?
Yes. So I did touch base with city manager Carolyn Lear, and so she definitely expressed an interest in order, like writing up basically like an internal sort of document that would direct staff as to what the process would look like should such an agreement be presented to staff. She expressed like a desire to make sure that that was actually broad to capture more than just like a 287G agreement, but kind of anything in that ballpark would all like follow the same expectations in terms of the process. But of course, that would be an internal document. Of course, it would be public if it were requested, but it would really be like the city manager's directive to staff.
I have a question about that. Would this, the city council voted it down? Would this be considered bringing it to the city manager and then circulate as an internal document? Would this be sort of considered an end run around the council? I mean, that's, I wonder.
That is a good question.
I will say from my perspective, I can certainly understand how it could be perceived that way. I think whatever directive would come from the city manager would be very specific in terms of their authority, in terms of directing staff over her expectations around what that process would look like should her staff come into a request for an agreement like that. Like I said, it is an internal document, so I wouldn't necessarily frame it in terms of kind of circumventing staff, because it really would be about the process of agreements. It wouldn't make statements of a position statement or anything like that in terms of the city. It would just be a directive to staff in terms of if this comes forward, this is what I expect that you will do in terms of the process.
So it would be less.
Good.
Yeah, when you said that, it kind of reminds me, it's less about, you know, a lot of that resolve had language about like, what we think is fair and just and compassion and all these very like florally language around, you know, the way that we care about our neighbors, where this would just be like, here, just taking those steps out. So I see what you're saying about the audio statement, and that's a good question, because that does make it seem more like, here's just the objective chunk of it, right? There's no subjectivity here. There's not being politicized in any way. This is just how we are going to address any request from ICE. Yeah, that's a good question. Does anybody else have any other questions or thoughts? Like I said, I do want to get to Councillor Beck at some point, but maybe if we just bubble up some questions first, since he has a better, obviously, pulse on, you know, Mark, I think that your question is right. Like, is saying like, I know that you don't like a resolve, but let's take it further and push harder. Like, I want to work this out in a way that is understanding and, you know, considerate of the feedback that we received, but still maybe also doesn't just roll over and forget about it.
I raised the question because I think that we have to be careful as a committee to not do something which is really going to impact our credibility.
That's fair. Yeah, thank you. Shane?
So I'm curious, and I'm sure Councillor Beck will speak to this too, but there are 3 new people on the council, and I had asked Courtney before the meeting if it might be, like, if it would be allowable for us to essentially just kind of resubmit what we had before to the new council and let them decide, where we were at the end of a council term before there are 3 new councillors. Maybe the sentiment has changed with those people. That at least gives them the opportunity to review it again, so it wouldn't be seen as, you know, that going around the council just by having the city manager put out what we asked for to begin with. And it gives them the chance to weigh in as new councillors too.
Courtney, were you able to determine if there's like a waiting period if something comes to the council?
There is not.
There is not. Thank you. I do, for me, in that question, it is, I like the idea of resubmitting it, but again, a lot of the feedback we got was like, resolves don't do anything. So like, now that we have more time to flesh out something a little bit more of like an ordinance, Counselor Beck, can you remind us when we originally brought this to GovOps, there was something on the books about ways in which we could, was it an ordinance that we would make it or
In
was?
order, a legislative policy directive. I think it's chapter 9, section 18. Where if that's what the direction you want council to go, then yeah, that would be them telling the city manager, hey, this is the new policy. City manager puts it on the books as available for display. Yes, 918. So yeah, it would be an order, and yes, council could direct the city manager for policy. I guess my thing with it though is the resolve didn't invent anything new. Like all the things that were discussed were already the policies. It was just, my understanding was you were asking the council to say, okay, take everything that was said and we're gonna put it in writing in one document. So now I'm hearing the possibility of the city manager will then create that internal policy. If the goal is to make sure that everyone's on the same page about it, I mean, that may, and again, speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for the council, but to me, that sounds like maybe that would be the way to go if the count or the city manager is agreeable to it, because that accomplishes the goal of take all the policies, here it is in one document, and all of the departments that are you can see it. And it wouldn't necessarily need the rubber stamp of council. And we get to the same goal of, hey, you know, these are the policies that we all agree upon and everyone's aware of it. And so if that conversation ever comes up, then this is the playbook we'll follow. You know, again, in my opinion, not speaking for the council, but you know, if you're looking for something more, I wouldn't do the resolve path. I would look at the other way then and really set forward your goal of why you're asking for that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for that. What are people's thoughts? How are people feeling about? Is this something that we would want to pursue differently? Is it something that we present to, you know, City Manager Lear? I do also want to acknowledge that our another member has joined us on Zoom. Welcome, Gabrielle.
Hi, I'm so happy I was able to make it.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
And I also do have a few thoughts. You know, I understand the reservations around continuing to pursue this resolve or something stronger like a policy, but I really think that having something that is clear and concise for our community to be able to reference is really important. And that's why I think a policy makes more sense, even if it is just something that writes out in writing that if ICE were to approach Bangor Police Department, this is the process that would be followed. And I know that we had that discussion a couple meetings ago prior to the vote with the chief of police. And he said that they did have a process. I think that we should have that process in writing because that is a large part of why people feel so afraid right now. And having information is always a good thing.
Yeah, thank you. That's definitely, I feel like what we said like 100 times, like if people are confused, we need to put it out there, right? Like that's the biggest hurdle that we have is that there's a lot, it's so easy to make assumptions when you don't have all the information. Is it safe to say, or am I simplifying it too much, Courtney, that an ordinance that we push through as a legislative order would be the same thing as City Manager Lear having it in a as like a policy on the books for staff training and staff awareness to have all that information?
So there's obviously multiple ways we could go about this. What I had suggested was more of actually like an internal memo or directive to staff. I think, if the council was interested in actually directing the city manager to actually formalize a policy around it, the order driven by council would make sense, I think. That would make it more formal, if you will, in terms of like a formal policy on the books as opposed to that sort of written directive to department heads.
Yeah, but it might say the same thing.
I mean, I think at the heart of it, it would outline the process that, you know, should such an agreement come forward, this is, you know, the steps that we would go through. Kind of to what Member Wiley was saying in terms of making sure that, especially like newer department heads, for example, understand that there is a process that they have to follow before any action is taken.
Right. Thank you.
Would there be any difference between the two if it became an ordinance that the council directed the city manager to move forward on, as opposed to what you're talking about, Courtney, internal memo describing to staff what they need to do if such and such happens? Is there any difference in the outcome between those two?
I think the intent and likely outcome would be the same, but I will say that there's an ordinance which is separate from a policy, which is separate from a directive from the city manager, which, you know, an ordinance, in this case, I don't think that legal or even the city manager's office would recommend that something like this become an ordinance, because it's really a policy decision. And it's really like internal focused, and typically ordinances are more like outward citizen facing, if that makes sense. So in, you know, the city manager under her purview does have the ability and authority to direct her staff in terms of overseeing the day-to-day business of the city. Where the overlap is in my brain is you know, if we were interested in entering into such agreement, then obviously there would need to be involvement by council as part of that process. So, you know, I think if this committee was comfortable with sort of action at the city manager level, I think it's ultimately up to her as to what that really looks like. Because that was, again, her just agreeing to basically put in writing her expectations around those sorts of agreements. If the committee wants to take a stronger position, then I think that goes back to what Councilor Beck was saying in terms of perhaps it's an order directing the city manager to create a policy that speaks to X, Y, and Z.
It seems to me like what the resolve boiled down to, and again, this is me just like spitballing here what I'm hearing, what the resolve originally boiled down to could easily be put in a directive from the city manager to staff, right? Like, we're not going to enter into a 287G agreement. If ICE does come to us, is exactly what happens. If we wanted to go back to the beginning and say, Bangor will never enter into a 287G agreement. And in fact, we're going to say that out loud and make it our statement, which is what we originally put forward in our really like, you know, throw everything at the wall attempt. Then that would have to look a little bit different in how we address it and what steps that looks like in terms of bringing it back to council. I think we right now have to decide what is going to achieve our goal, what matters most to the people of Bangor, what actually is going to be the most helpful to them and not performative, and what do we think we should do?
A question about that.
Yeah.
Just a clarification. If in fact the city manager creates a memo the staff, does that become public?
It is a public document, it would
Okay,
be, yes.
Okay. And that would accomplish the same thing then, yeah, okay.
I don't think we have to vote to bring this to, do we have to vote to have Courtney or ask?
The city manager?
Yeah.
I mean, you can vote to recommend that the city manager do it, but like I said, I've already chatted with her, she's happy to.
Do it? Okay. I would like to just make sure, I mean, what's the feeling? What are we thinking?
I say we do it. I think it's a good start. I think it gives us room to do more later on as more becomes necessary. If it is necessary, hopefully it wouldn't be. But I like that it is collaborative. It's not something that is, you know, it's taking information that we already have and just making it public. I think that that is the best thing we can do right now.
Thank you. Counselor?
I was just gonna add, yeah, it would be interesting to hear what the feedback is from the folks who originally spoke out to this group to ask for it, how they'll feel about that policy once it's made, because it does sound like it accomplishes the original intent to make
Yeah.
sure that
Yeah.
everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, I have gotten feedback from folks that they, want to see it revisited. And again, I know this is just like a giant kick the can down the road, but that already passed the legislator. It's sitting on the governor's desk. Like, this could be across the board for the state, something that is taken care of at a state level by January. So not that I want to say that that's going to happen or that's what we should rely on.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily see it as the can being kicked, because again, the fact that you've reached the point where the city manager would put this together is the fruit of all the work that's been done to this point. And that's, gonna be good for everybody if that's what ends up happening. Again, speaking for myself, but here, everyone's gonna be on the same page internally, and the public also sees it, it's in writing, which is ultimately what was wanted. So whether it's a resolve or it's a policy, it's something within the city that everyone knows and understands is on the same page with.
I think that's the important piece, that regardless of what process we go through, as long as the public is aware, that's really what we want to accomplish from the very beginning.
Is it safe to read the vibes that just having Courtney, if you're able to follow up with the city manager on this, that would be the right steps to take? Okay. Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone. The next item just newly added to the agenda, I would like to have a discussion about what was presented to us by Bangor citizen Jamie Beck earlier this evening. I guess, can I start with you, Counselor? Can you give us an update as to what the conversation was like in the workshop, and because you received this information, correct?
Well, I've seen it, but I didn't receive the screenshots that.
So what was shared with counselors at the workshop?
The question you were asking me though, the stuff that Jamie brought with her, yeah, no, I've seen when she got it, but that was not.
So the other counts, okay. I wasn't sure if that was something that the workshop saw. No, okay.
Right, and yeah, last night's conversation was, what I understood is the city manager came to us looking for direction.
Okay.
Because it's a safety issue that was presented, that's rail yard property, and you've got trains zipping through there, and plus with winter coming, it's near impassable for emergency vehicles. There's some kind of emergency that happens back there. You've got people who, for lack of a kinder phrase, die in their tents. There's no one to help them and rescue them. So council was being asked for direction about how do we handle this, what do we do? And so the date was presented to us of December 19th, because that's when the well opened their day center. So there's another location that people would have available to stay warm during the day. And so there was a lot of discussion about all the aspects of it, but the general direction given to the city manager is yes, go forward with the December 19th closure date for safety reasons.
I don't know if anyone at the table has an answer to this question, but does that, so then the council said yes, or during the workshop, yeah, we think that you should do something. Then how does it get to like an outdated piece of paper being slapped on a tent? And like what? Cause I thought that we had a liaison that like worked with, like from the city that worked with all of the different partnerships, like, I don't know, honestly, if I got that based on what we saw, I'd be like, this isn't real. It's dated in 2035.
This is the point in previous meetings where we would look to the city manager to fill in the gap on that information, because in the past, Debbie often was the one who knew, you know, what was happening. We do have a liaison. She's been in here before in these exact places. So what happened from that meeting to the execution of this? You able to fill in that gap?
I will say that I can't speak specifically. I wasn't directly involved, but if I had to guess, it was honestly probably as simple as an oversight in terms of the, you know, the different departments working together. Cause I noticed that BCAT was referenced on that notice, which falls under the police department, but obviously they're working with public health. We do have a homeless response manager, excuse me, that's vacant now. She moved on to another opportunity. And so that's actually another conversation that will be circling around at future committee meetings. But the work that occurs in the encampments, of course, are pretty like widespread. It's not, obviously it doesn't follow one person in the city to work through all of that and execute. So certainly this is also the first I'm hearing about this notice, and certainly I will be chatting first thing in the morning with the city manager, and I'm sure that we'll take immediate steps to correct that notice, and as well as make sure that the resources that are actually being provided are accurate and updated. But beyond that, unfortunately, I can't speak to it. But I will, if whatever committee action or questions or anything, I'm happy to gather that information and circle up with the committee to make sure that all of your questions and concerns, especially those as well, the citizens, are answered.
Yeah, thank you. Shane.
Just a clarifying question. So the person who was hired to be the homelessness response manager is no longer in that position. That position lives in public health. Who is managing the responsibilities of that role right now?
I believe that it would generally fall on the public health director, who has been in lockstep with that position and is just newly vacant, like I think less than a week or about a week. So it's not like it's been ongoing or anything.
Yeah, I guess my main concern is, especially now that we're in the colder months, and I think it's safe to say we can stop saying heading into the colder months. We are in the colder months. It is very cold, especially at night. There needs to be someone in that role, even if it's like an interim appointment. I have great respect for the public health director. She can't possibly do her job and this job and maintain sanity.
I would agree, and I just want to make super clear to this committee that the council has made it very clear to the city manager that this role is very vital and important, and that they think it's actually part of, I think, and Council Beck can correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of part of a larger conversation as well in terms of what our response to homelessness is. And you know, I think in some ways it kind of begs a broader question, but obviously the need to address that day-to-day work is also at the forefront. And so the city manager has made a commitment to work quickly and efficiently, but thoroughly, I think, with public health to actually come forward to council sooner rather than later with their thoughts and plans and ideas around that to pass through the council.
I'm glad to hear that. It is deeply disappointing and disheartening to hear this kind of, and I'm not saying that you're just writing it off as like an oversight or whatever, but like that just saying like it was an oversight is a huge, massive problem, right? Like that's human lives that were just, oops, we made a mistake. We gave out a really old resource list because these people don't matter. We didn't take the time to clean up this information as these things happen, right? How long has HEAL been closed? We've known that they have not existed for quite some time. There should be someone within the Office of Public Health who updates that regularly when these things change. And I know that like, it's not necessarily our role to tell them what to do, but it is our role to advise council. And I think that we ought to do something just to, you know, whether it's encouraging them to come up with some kind of plan for, you know, if someone is not in a position, right? Like, let's say we have a retirement or someone resigns or someone gets really sick and they can't be in that position. Who takes over, who's monitoring those resources, because it is literally life and death.
I also want to echo what Shane just said, because the fact that this notice just went out and that woman has left her position, no disrespect to the director of public health, but I think it's telling that the wrong information was provided to people, because when people are short-staffed, mistakes happen, and like that shouldn't have happened. I think it was preventable. I think it's telling that we need to provide more support to the public health department, and that maybe they need more than one person working on homelessness response. Because if one person leaves their job and shit hits the fan, I'm sorry, I know it's a public meeting, but that's essentially what happened. One person left their role. This notice went out, had old information on it, inaccurate information. It looked fake. If there were multiple people in that role, in a supportive position in that role, maybe that wouldn't have happened.
And as a follow-up, sorry, real quick, because I'm very frustrated with this situation. Just Googling homelessness response manager, director, whatever the position is, Bangor, the person who left that position, their contact information is still listed with a phone number that leads, it looks like, to a direct line, which is probably not being monitored because there's no one in that office. And that's on our public website right now. And I get it that like there's a delay when people leave, but I'm assuming this person probably gave notice that they were leaving and that should have been updated. When it looks like actually last content update was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, so for the website, I'm gonna take full responsibility of that. That is actually on the city manager's office to make sure that is updated. I'll make sure that's taken care of in the morning. I do, however, want to make it very clear that there is not just one person in public health that is working on homelessness. There's multiple people. We have outreach workers. The public health director is oftentimes out in those encampments as well. So she obviously has a lot of things on her plate and whatnot, but there is, and of course, then there's BCAT and folks from from PD as well as the city manager pretty involved. So I don't want to give the impression that simply because one position is now vacant that like a bunch of balls are going to drop. And I say oversight because I can't speak to it specifically. I don't know the specific circumstances, but what I do know is certainly we would not intentionally put outdated resources on the notice. But obviously it is very concerning that did occur. And so we will certainly investigate that and rectify that as quickly as possible.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I have a follow-up question to that. Along those lines, what is the review process for putting out documentation like that? Does it go through multiple channels? Are there multiple people who see it?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Gabriella. I don't have the answer to that. I'm not quite sure.
Would it be appropriate?
That's
if,
okay.
It does look like there is an answer from the gallery.
Okay. Gonna come to the.
Thank you.
Not that this is like the end all be all, but I have a hypothesis. It seems as though because the same friend got a notice back in May on a different piece of private property, and it looks to be the exact same piece of paper. Obviously, dates were different, et cetera, and times, but it may have been part of the BCAT's toolkit. And it may have been given out by BCAC. I know the one in May was given by BCAT. And I believe that the same set of outdated resources. So it might just be they're running off a bunch of copies of this and just having it in
Dating
the,
it.
and just they date it for whatever they need to in the moment. So it might be a BCAT document where that lives. Yeah, there are, since 2003, there are people who haven't worked for the city since then who are still listed on there. I think also the big part about this is not just the document is wrong. Yeah, that's horrible. But the fact that no one, from the reports that I have gotten, and that doesn't mean everyone, just who I've heard from, no one had a conversation with people who are living out there saying, this isn't safe. We have to do something. We're looking at closing the state because of this reason. What is the plan? That's like the human right piece of this, because you are the Human Rights Committee. The right to feel safe, the right to have a secure location where you can live, and even if it's not a roof over your head. And I know that the council is really starting to push forward on what can we do in a more substantial way. I'm wondering if it might be useful for this group to kind of give some input on how can that conversation really lean into where is the dignity in the conversation. Like, let's actually treat people as human beings instead of pieces of trash discarded on the side of the road. Because that's kind of how, not kind of, that is how I've been heard that people feel like they don't matter. Like, we're just going to throw this up, get your stuff and get out.
Right.
And that's heartbreaking.
Right.
Because people don't have anywhere to go. We don't have enough housing right now. And having the shelters is great, but it, like I said before, is not the solution for everyone.
Yeah, right.
So that's just my 2 cents again. 5 cents now, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, Amy. Deanna?
2 questions, one of which probably don't have an answer to, but did the city manager go to the director of public housing before going to city council? And was their directive to come to city council to discuss this?
I'm not sure what conversation they had beforehand. I mean, I would assume they had conversation because, you know, the city manager knew to pull the city or the public director to the table to give information. So I'm sure they had chatted all day about the issue.
And I've been lost. Sorry.
And it might sit to the surface. Nope, it's not going to. I will let you know.
We'll call on you immediately to get back.
So,
But that, I think that Jamie brings up a really good point. And that is like, obviously, it's very upsetting. Like, this is. Go ahead.
we have information, in the past, we would get information about how many people are in these encampments and information about them. Do we have that level of detail about who is currently there? How many people are we talking about being affected? What do we know about the individuals here?
Well, what was shared last night with us is we're talking roughly 40 to 50 people. We weren't getting an exact number. Yes.
Thank you. So I think that just my 2 cents now is that, like, yes, that's a disturbing piece of information, but the fact is, and I think that you outlined it perfectly with your friend having received this in May and then a literal copy and paste. I mean, this is kicking the can down the road where we're just, people have to move again and again and again because there isn't a safety, there isn't a place where we can say, you know, this is your life, this is how you are living it. Where can you do that safely and receive the supports and resources that you need? And, you know, it doesn't have to be what we expect of you. It has to be what you want for your life. So here's how to do it that emergency vehicles can help you if you need it, and that you're not going to get hit by a train in the snow, right? Like, we want them to be safe, and we want them to have autonomy and agency to make those decisions. So what it feels like to me is that, again, assuming based on what I've seen and heard, is that we keep giving all of these individuals this very prescribed solution that does not work. And so they circumvent that because it does not work. And then it happens again and again and again versus actually looking at the prescribed square peg that we're offering and saying, this doesn't work. If the federal government has 19 different strategies, what are we implementing as a city? And if we're not implementing those as a city, why not? And is that, like, if that's what you need from the committee to say, implement those strategies and stop trying to put everyone into the same square peg, then I think we would all be in agreement on that. But like, is that the problem?
I think it might be helpful for some of the newer committee members to know about the 19 things that we're referencing here. And I think what we are referencing is when we had HUD in, who was assisting with
Well, yeah.
other encampments that were shut down, moved, closed, I'm not sure the proper terminology here. But thank you. And from that experience, I believe the city of Bangor had developed their, and Courtney, you can please correct me if I'm wrong, they had developed their own set of guidelines and things that they were following based on that experience, correct?
It seemed like the answer was like, go live in a house that you have to follow the rules of, and that doesn't work for.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
I know.
Just providing context for some of our newer people. I'll be gone in one meeting. Although she tried to make it today.
This year. Jamie, I know that you obviously, it sounds like it's like a federal piece of information, you know, that's shared on a national level. Is that correct? These 19 strategies?
Yeah, so usage doesn't actually exist anymore because of the new administration. But when they did put forward these 19 strategies for working with homeless encampments. And it isn't like, there's a lot of different components to it. There is actually engaging with the people who are in the encampment, having them have a voice and say, and being compensated for their time and their expertise in how we want to move forward together. Not moving forward on any piece of actually closing an encampment until you have assurances that you have services in place, you have other housing or other locations for them to go that are valid, that they are accepting of. There's, again, 19 different strategies that are part of this bigger plan that can be found online. And I know Councillor Beck has done some work in figuring out what that might look like for Bangor, because we do have a specific encampment in mind, and there are things that need to be considered given our local resources and things like that. But going back to what member Fellis was talking about with closing the Valley Ave encampment in 2022, the city did have the HUD technical assistance team come out and help to try and integrate all of the different organizations to help house people. My understanding is that it worked for a time being, but that infrastructure was not solid enough to maintain that level of support. So the people that did get housed from the Valley Ave encampment were not able to maintain housing for longer than 6 months-ish, because we didn't have the back end support that's really required. I will say too, my personal thought is that of those 40 to 50 people who are living down at the railroad encampment, probably 70 to 80%, if not more of them, are chronically unhoused, meaning that they've been unhoused for more than a year, within a year's amount of time, or in patches in the last 4 years that add up to a year. So that adds a whole other level of complexity because of the trauma that goes into that long-term homelessness, exposure to the outside elements, the mental load, the emotional load. There's a lot of different components that go into that. So we're kind of dealing with a different population than people who have just recently become unhoused.
Thank you very much.
Like, can we just hang out up here?
No.
You want to push the button next time?
All right.
We're captured, I can tell.
Okay, good. See, Courtney's on it.
Yeah.
Courtney's on it.
Okay. Other questions?
This is, like I said, I only have one more meeting, but I think we need to get an honest readout of what's actually happening in the city. We used to get regular updates, but now I feel like some of that information is questionable of what we were receiving. You know, like I said, we were told that there were these processes and these things that were happening, and how do we get from something that was supposed to be happening to showing up to a meeting and a piece of paper appearing on the next day? That is a big gap of what was shared to us previously to what is happening in action.
I think my two questions are, well, first, probably most pressing, like, the directive was given by council to say, yes, you know, folks need to move out of that space for safety. Is it in our purview helpful, necessary for our committee to recommend a pause on that until resources are actually identified that are helpful? Is the city willing to hear that, or the council willing to hear that, and will that make a difference? And then two, obviously the much bigger question of what resources are there that are going to be available to provide that support? Yeah.
So I get the first part. I mean, this committee needs to do what it feels is right. Like, you advise the council, you know, and if what you're seeing and what you're hearing and what you're experiencing is improvements need to be made, then we need to hear it all. You know, and again, that's my opinion, but that's what this committee does. And I would say be helpful. I mean, like anything, you know, the council will do what council does with that information, but at least it should have access to it. And then what was I'm sorry, the second part?
Do we have, and I don't know if you're the right person to ask this, but we heard that you did more research on those 19 strategies. Does the city of Bangor have the resources? If we were to say, whoa, hold your horses, this feels arbitrary, let's take some time to be thoughtful about this. Does Bangor have the tools and resources to provide that support before it gets more dangerous?
I mean, I can't speak for the whole council, but that's when it was presented last night. I mean, it was presented as this when it's coming or when it's here, but you know, it could be an extremely dangerous situation, especially, you know, you're in an actual active railway. Now I will also say, speaking for myself, I mean, it was shocking to get the information. There's a lot of questions I wish I had more time to absorb and ask. I have questions that I wanted to have asked. I've gotten a lot of phone calls, including from people who are living there, who going back to the 19 strategies. And I think that's why I showed my support, because that was such a big part of the closure of Camp Hope. They were really following that. And I don't know exactly what's happening on there. I only know what was shared tonight with the notice and what I was told on the phone, that from a group of 3 other residents who want to meet with me, that they also haven't had any kind of outreach done as far as the closure goes. I was surprised. Here's the paperwork. And so, I mean, had I known that, maybe I, again, speak for myself, I would probably have pushed more for conversation, because to me, that's what the 19 strategies are about. Conversations. Is that this is not, we're not just evicting you. You know, we're taking this action together. You know, that this is a social service we're doing for you, for, you know, everybody's benefit, including yourself. But to invite folks to the table is make them part of the solution. To, you know, I think the very first strategy talks about figure out the 2 or 3, or depending on how many people, you know, for this group 2 or 3 would work. People who would be representative of the community. Who can, you know, relay information back and forth and help build that trust, you know, and as was mentioned, you know, you compensate them for their time and expertise for that work, you know, whether it's stipends, gift cards, whatever, you know, mutually agreeable. And so you're getting buy-in. Like, this is, you lay out the problem. Hey, we're not gonna be able to get to you. You know, these are the situations we're going to be facing. We've got complaints from abutting property owners who are seeing the trash and all kind of things, and work together to come up with solutions that works for everybody. And so all the strategies kind of follow that line of, you don't do a closure just to do the closure. There's a real health and safety issue, which was laid out for us last night. There is a real health and safety issue. So this is, definitely being taken seriously. So I have more questions myself, I'll admit, that exactly what is this all looking like? What's the plan we've got for this?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
On the form that was stuck to tents, it says that it's private property. Who's the owner of the property? Is it a city resident, or is it, because it's along the tracks, right? So is it the company that operates the tracks? Did they reach out to the city to ask us to do this? I'm seeing a no.
Did the railway? What was shared last night with us is actually the city's been trying to contact, I believe the officer from the railway, the overseas is based out of Massachusetts. And so it's been difficult getting cooperation from them, is what was shared last night. I don't know if it's changed since then.
Well, also, I think it's a combination actually, because the railroad owns certain property, like I think it's like 50 feet from the center line. There was some discussion, it seemed like, in terms of some of it being owned by the city, but obviously I believe that the plaza itself is privately owned, and I can say that I have seen complaints come through from the business owners in that plaza that are very upset with having to manage and deal with the folks that are behind their businesses.
To get something for the next meeting with the more information gathered about what started all of this, a history or something, so that, I think we're asking a lot of questions and can't really get fully realized answers. And to Councilor Beck, I know what it's like to be in that position, to be in a meeting where someone wants you to make a decision very urgently, especially when they're talking about health and safety, but you don't have all the information given to you. So I think we as a committee should say, let's get all the information here.
Yeah.
So that we can.
But our next meeting is after the 19th.
Can we make a sooner meeting?
Yeah, but will that be enough time for then to go to GovOps and then go to the, council? I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you.
Well, I guess my question would be is what action are you hoping to have taken before the 19th?
I don't, unless there are resources to support, this cannot happen before this, in my opinion. That feels incredibly unfair.
So you want this committee to make a recommendation to the city manager and the city to not enforce this? I just want to make sure I'm understanding where we're going with this conversation, because I think there's two different things that are happening.
Yes, and I cannot make a unilateral decision. Personally, I feel like it would be a huge human rights violation to have this information and not say, whoa. If we have all these questions, and it seems like we have more information than was shared at the workshop last night, what questions are being asked, or what answers are being received? And maybe that is, we go to the next GovOps meeting and or whenever more information is available, we listen and we hear so that we can make a more informed decision. But until we have that information, I fully understand not wanting to work in a vacuum and push things forward in an uninformed way. But this feels dangerous to just say, okay, we'll wait and see, because lives are on the line.
Can council revoke? Can they come back and say we change our mind?
I mean, it'd have to be a meeting, they'd have to discuss it, but it'd have to be an agenda item. But, because the other part of it is it's also a matter of council staying in its lane. Like, this really is in the purview of the city manager. City manager, yes, came and looked for some guidance of where to go, but council, and again, in my opinion, council also gotta be careful about not
Speaking for council, right?
well, right, but also not jumping over into the city manager's lane and saying this is the way to do it. It's just the whole thing is heartbreaking. This is difficult for me, I'll be honest. It's heartbreaking, really. Because there is so many facets to this, because you do have the property owners that are nearby who are suffering because of the activities happening on you, the people themselves, of course, who are suffering. And you've got, the city's working very hard to try to coordinate all this and pull this all together. And on top of that, we don't have the resources, like what was shared with us last night, is that there was a question that one of the councilors had brought up about, this organization that received ARPA money, United Way, Heart of Maine, and part of their work was going to be coordinating nonprofits and try to do that. And so the public health director brought up the fact that this isn't an issue of coordination. This is just boots on the ground are stretched thin. And everyone's doing everything they can, so it's just heartbreaking. And again, I'm speaking for myself here, but I personally would like to see some more coordination. One of the strategies that's in this 19 strategies is you get all the stakeholders together, and that includes business owners and the people on the ground, and you have dialogue and say, hey, folks who are living here, you realize by, trash on the ground and the needles or any of these other things, this is the issues you're causing for them. How can we work together to come over that? And then you end up with like models like we do in San Jose, where they say, hey, we're going to give you these colored bags. You can turn in up to 4 full a day, and we'll pay you $5 a bag. And next thing you know, their areas just look immaculate. And it works for those people. I don't know if that kind of thing works here. That's a decision that a body's got to make, but it's heartbreaking because I just feel like there could be so much more dialogue.
Yeah.
And again, speaking for myself, but
It's also heartbreaking because it feels like this has been the priority of the council for years, but we're in the same boat where we have examples of it works. Like, what am I missing? Is it us? No, I know it's not us, but not that we're the problem, but we know that, we don't, whatever. Mark.
I think that, what you say, Michael, about bringing people together is exactly what needs to happen. Who is the person, or which is the body that orchestrates that to see that that happens? Is that public health? Because unless an individual in the know, or a group from the city pulls this together, it's not going to happen.
If I may, just real quick, yeah, I guess it does primarily live in public health with a lot of involvement from the city manager. Also, I do think the city manager intended to touch on at least some of this at GovOps on Monday. And then also there is a council meeting with a pre-council workshop on the 8th. So there are different opportunities, if you will, for further discussion in a public meeting before the date. I just want to toss that out there.
That's the first.
The first is GovOps, and the 8th is there'll be pre-council workshops in a council meeting that night.
Thank you. On the 8th.
Yeah, and also, sorry, Gabrielle has had her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gabrielle and then Shane.
Hi, I just really wanted to echo some of those things that were already mentioned by Councillor Beck. And I think that one of the best things that we could do in this scenario is a community response. And that means involving the people who are unhoused. And I think we're really lucky right now in this specific case that we have a council that is open and willing to listen to people. Not to mention the election results. We've got 3 councilors that are very willing to listen to the needs of the unhoused community. And I think if we partner with them, they are not simply a problem to be solved, as has been an ongoing conversation at this meeting tonight. They are people who exist. They are people who are suffering. They are people who have thoughts and needs and desires, and their rights are being violated. Every single time we make a decision on their behalf without involving them, we are violating their autonomy. So I think I think what we need is a truly community response. Yeah, we need to involve the business owners because this is frustrating for them. But I think if we also involve the people who are experiencing this and we go out to them, and it's not just a matter of us being like, hey, you can't be here, or hey, here's a notice and here's a place you can go. If we go to them and say, hey, we've got this problem. This is something that is not good for you. And I'm sure you would probably agree living on the train tracks is not good. What can we do? And if we approach it that way and we bring people in from this community and engage them with the process and with the process specifically of providing solutions, I think we might be able to actually move forward on this in a way that is both productive and might actually have long-term success. Because right now we are just hitting our heads against the wall of the people versus the business versus the city council, and it's not effective. What are any thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you. I agree. But before we have a discussion, I know that Shane had his hand up and I want to hear that.
Yeah, I just, not to be that person, but I do just want to voice a frustration that the city manager didn't think to have this conversation with us at all. If the intent, if her goal was to bring it to council, maybe come to us as we advise council on issues of human rights. This is clearly an issue of human rights. So that's frustrating to hear. And also to add on to that, it's a little disappointing that we have not seen her at one of our meetings since she joined the team here in Bangor. And I know you're here every time, Courtney, and we love you so much. But it would be lovely to have her at the table again. I mean, not to compare her to Debbie, but Debbie came to just about every meeting that we had and freely shared information about things going on and upcoming efforts that the city had planned. So that's my frustration in the moment. I guess now that council has voted to approve that date, would the city manager have the authority to put a pause on that date? Or would it have to go back to council and have them vote to pause?
I don't think they'd have to vote per se, but I do think she'd check back in with the council, but yes, it's in her authority to change that date.
And just to clarify, yeah, so no official vote was taken. It was just kind of the counting the head nods kind of thing. It was just a workshop.
I just want to say this out loud because my brain will lose it eventually in life. You know, we're talking about best practices that exist everywhere. And I don't know that we've ever actually seen any of the things that are in-house that are used when these decisions are being made. I hate the idea of a checklist, but my goodness, if you're gonna go to city council saying, here's this urgent situation, I would want to be presented with something that says, did you do your due diligence in advance?
Did you bring all the stakeholders to the table? Did you check with have a conversation?
And what are we as Bangor citizens saying that we are holding our elected officials, our people in positions of authority, what are we holding them to? We're saying, yes, you have met with them. You reached out to them multiple times,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it has to be a checklist, but I think that should be the thing. So you aren't in this position where someone's coming in, presenting you a version of events, asking you to make give an approval to something, again, not a vote, an approval, are you okay with this? When it sounds like, like we're saying, we have all these questions, your opportunity wasn't there to have those same questions, and just an idea for the future as we are looking at what this looks like.
I think that's yes, very smart. And feels completely reasonable. Because I feel like a lot of what we're talking about feels like, oh, we're already stretched thin. Oh, we can't put demands on individuals that it's been incredibly clear is already the problem. But having a system, an operational system in place for these kinds of situations, which are not new. This has been the story of Bangor for decades.
We were told previously multiple times, yes, we're working with these individuals. We're offering them, if they want to return home, we're offering them bus fare to get them home. These were the things we've been repeatedly told in meetings over the years. you know? I feel like if that conversation had come here first and we didn't hear that, we'd be like, but that's what we've been told has happened previously. I'm not saying it was intentional or anything. I'm saying, how can we establish a practice going forward that ensures that everything is being addressed properly before we upend people's situations?
Absolutely. And again, what are our options here? Okay, so I mean, can we even give public comment at GovOps?
I mean, it chair's discretion, but it also depends if it's on the agenda or not.
Chairs in the room.
Create the expectation that it's there. I mean, if it's, I mean, again, speaking for myself, you know, yes, I would want to have all the input I could have on the matter. You know, because again, you know, and just to clarify last time, I mean, we were given ample opportunity to ask questions. I mean, like the whole idea was, you know, she came to us looking for, you know, guidance from council. You know, and just no more new information has just come to light since then that, you know, that I think that even the people at the table didn't know, you know, that.
Right.
You know, I don't want to speak for any individual, but it's like some of the things that happened, you know, because if it turns out it was BCAT who brought it, that could have been a BCAT's decision to do that. That may not have been part of a city plan. I don't know. But the questions that are coming up now, you know, again, I'm saying that I would have asked, it's because I had more time to absorb.
Right.
But it wasn't like a, hey, chop, you got to do this now. I mean, it was, you know, the conversation kind of played itself out for what we had. You know, so we did get a chance to ask questions.
Yes.
I will not be here next week. I am on vacation, so Carolyn will actually be the staff rep at the table for this. I'm happy to chat with her in the morning and let her know the interest around a conversation specific to this topic. But minimally, certainly there would be public comment opportunity at the meeting on the 8th as well.
Hope you're going someplace warm.
I am.
Okay, but it's also probably fair, like, I am so anxious about the fact that like people are now living in a spot where the clock is ticking and we have to wait 2 weeks to say like, whoa, this feels like a bad idea.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, I'm happy to circle up after I've chatted with the city manager tomorrow, but I know that they planned on touching on, she planned on touching on, cause typically like I'll have like my assistant city manager updates. In this case, I put city manager updates as part of the GovOps. And so I think she could speak at least to some degree around this, but let me chat with her in the morning. I'm happy to send an email out to the committee afterward to let you know what the plan is and what the opportunity is. And certainly folks can reach out to council as well at counselors@bangormaine.gov to express any concerns that they may have around this information.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Cause I understand the safety. I get it. Right? We don't want anyone to get hurt. But the 19th feels like not enough time.
Yeah, I'm curious to know like how we're gonna circle back with these 40 to 50 people and provide like the proper resources and safe locations, like what the follow-up will be.
Right.
For those 40 to 50 people. So maybe per that conversation that you're gonna have in the morning, we can get some sort of update, or I just don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's more of an immediate concern, those 40 to 50 people, and helping them forward the best way that we possibly.
Absolutely. But yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like you were saying a place with additional beds opens on the 19th. So is it just like, just so you know, you
Not bad, so,
Right.
it's just it's a day warming center. Yeah. No, I mean, there's certainly questions, and, you know, I apologize, that maybe in some respects I can overstep my liaison role. You know, I'm definitely not speaking for the council, but again, just coming from a place of, I, like everyone, want to see this problem as amicably solved for everybody involved. You know, in a way that helps the most people.
Did it come up on at the meeting? Like, what have you done in terms of communicating with people?
I don't think anyone asked that question. I think it was more about the date and talking about.
Did anyone ask about bringing it to the committee?
I don't think anyone did. It's a question.
What's the point of a liaison if it can't be a two-way street? Right? Our hope is that you'll bring things to us and that you'll bring things to them. Sorry, I'm spicy.
No, I was just thinking about, you'd be such a scary mom.
That's my 14-year-old. You would agree. That means that you can have.
Yeah.
Real quick, Courtney, would it be appropriate or helpful if like we as a committee work outside of the meeting to update that resource list as best as we can and send it back to the city, who then can edit it and then get that out immediately or as quickly as possible to those folks, so that at least we can contribute in that way quicker, theoretically?
I certainly think any, feedback and information around resources is always welcomed, and it's a good thing to always double check all of that anyway. But honestly, if I had to guess, we probably do have an updated resource list. And again, I really do hate to say it too, and I understand why, but I do think it was probably an oversight that the notice itself did not have the updated list. But certainly we want to make sure that we have all the information in terms of resources, so we would always welcome that.
Sure.
So then is the expectation that we, as citizens, can email all of these concerns and frustrations to city councilors, and that you'll check in to see if this is gonna be on the agenda on next Monday's meeting?
Correct.
Would anyone oppose, say if I were available to go and talk, would it be appropriate to talk on behalf of this committee? To say like, just these are the questions that we have about.
I would recommend a vote, actually, if that is something the committee's interested in doing.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I don't even know if that's the right thing to do. Like, what do you guys think? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I be honest with you, I did not come prepared to speak about this topic tonight. To your point, I mean, it was,
Sorry.
No, it's all right. I was in an agenda mode, but also, again, speaking for myself, was a problem solving mode. And I don't know if this would be helpful to this committee, but one of the things I spent today doing is I took the 19 strategies and I rewrote it to tailor it for the situation at the railroad. And walk through step by step. Would it be helpful to this committee for me to send that, what I wrote, to look and get your opinion on it? Like, does this?
Yeah.
Again, I don't, that's the thing. I don't know if council itself would be interested in that feedback. I would hope, but again, I can't speak for them. I'm curious though to see, is like, am I on the right track? Because again, it's all about dialogue. And these strategies are tested, they're proven. And again, and I think this is kind of an institutional memory issue, but these were applied to Camp Hope, and then at least I'm not seeing evidence that they're being applied now. And just to see if these strategies were implemented, would it be a different outcome? Would it be a better outcome? And again, this is for all stakeholders, including the business owners who are also seeing issues as well. So no one's being forgotten about. But I personally would be interested in hearing feedback on if this would be helpful to the folks on the ground doing the work.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely open to anything being shared in terms of just being able to look at it through a different lens. Like, that's the entire purpose of this committee, is to provide additional lenses to pieces. So I think that would be a good use of our time if we're able to look over it before Monday, so that you're able to present that if that's, in your interest. I'm hyper aware of the fact that we are short on time, and I do greatly apologize for that as the chair and not prioritizing the time of the additional things that we had on our agenda, but this feels pressing in terms of really figuring out what to do.
Might I suggest that we vote that we do want something brought forth for the GovOps meeting, and that I think the question is, what do we want to take shape as? I can see us making a formalized statement like we did previously in a resolution. And I think that one of the things we need to say is we have many, many questions. One of the big questions, why wasn't this brought to us as a human rights concern. Why didn't this come to us? You know, we can restate many of the same questions that we've had here tonight. But I know we've shaped a statement before, and I think that's appropriate, again, in this situation.
And just for new members, how we did it in the past was we just put it on a Google Doc to be able to share what the statement is and then ask for feedback if changes need to be made before that statement was confirmed. But I do think that we have notes from tonight's meeting that really capture what the interest or the questions from this committee is. So thank you for that vote or that recommendation for a vote. I would like to move it to a vote. Are folks in favor of someone from this committee making a statement on behalf of the committee to GovOps if appropriate or allowed, right, if it's on the agenda, on December 1st? Can I get a motion?
I move then.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank
I
you.
second.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Okay, so we will need to do a roll vote. I'll start with you, Gabrielle.
Yes.
Leanna?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
Katie is a yes. All right. So then thank you very much for that recommendation. We will work to put something that we can at least make a combined statement about what comes next. Where we go from now there, it like leaves me with a lot of anxiety that we're just gonna wait. Just feels so wrong to go home to my bed where it's like the clock is ticking and we're not doing anything. But I'm hopeful that we'll have more information tomorrow on maybe what is being done and how we can best support that. So just check your emails. I know it's the day before Thanksgiving. So again, weird timing. And thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. I appreciate that. I'm just gonna jump forward quickly. Are there any updates for Martin Luther King breakfast?
I have no updates today.
Okay. We do have that coming up in January.
Yes. The work continues on planning. Really no major changes or anything to the event location, or they're still maybe looking for ASL interpreters. So if anybody knows anybody,
Okay.
maybe. Okay.
Just had to remember who said it to me.
Do you know if they'll want any education or what that build out?
No, but I can email the organizer. But at least one of the people on the main planning group is actually gonna be out of the country for the next meeting.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the organizing will be done via email, so I'll reach out.
Okay, that would be great. Wonderful. We have, so this actually gives you more time. Courtney thank you, Shane, for that. Moving on for the other business. Courtney was able to share some information in the actual packet, and I additionally shared some updates based on what we talked about earlier today. And I apologize for sending that so late. But I think that this will be a good discussion to at least share for next meeting for us to discuss what we might want to do in terms of recommending a language access plan to the city of Bangor. And then lastly, Courtney, for the remote meeting policy discussion, we obviously all know why they have chosen to pause remote meeting policy. Is that gonna, maybe it is a counselor back question, is that gonna come back to a vote to whether or not to reinstate it?
Right, well, I mean, my understanding is that there's gonna be another discussion about all the different technical issues about bringing it back to avoid disruptions.
Got it.
And then council will get to make the decision about whether or not to bring it back based on that.
And is it am I correct in assuming that that will include ways to vet callers, way to collect information on their?
And yeah, I mean, it's be a number, we don't have the list, and I don't have the list yet of what the options are, but I mean, it's whatever the recommendations end up being that are most feasible.
I would love to request that if possible, you share that with us. If it's before this, it comes up before our next meeting, because I think that could also be a really important lens to look at it through like disability access.
Yep.
and the value of having Zoom options.
Well, and just so you know too, that, you know, those who do need information, it is available if they contact staff in advance.
Right,
Yes,
right.
Foundation.
Right, but I think it'd be also like important to share in case we see things that are like, oh, actually, you can't ask that question because.
Right. Yeah, but for example, like one of the things that was discussed was the possibility of asking commenters to be shown on camera.
Yeah.
Again, nothing's been decided about that, but that was something that was floated.
Yeah, there's a lot of considerations from, I think, staff perspective in terms of what's manageable, what actually makes sense. I know I hear people talk about being on camera, and I'll be honest, like early in the pandemic, a huge concern, and the reason why so many communities don't allow that is actually because people were showing very inappropriate images perhaps, and it takes a second or two to cut it off. So well, I think we're exploring all that. It certainly will come back to council for more in-depth conversation, but obviously the nature of this committee, we wanted to make sure you were all aware because the policy update impacted all of committees and boards.
Correct.
So.
Correct. I would just like to make a formal recommendation that we see what is presented so that we can provide feedback through our specialized lenses here. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you again for being patient and being on this journey. I really appreciate everyone's thoughtfulness and
Sorry, can we talk about next meeting?
yes.
The next meeting, a regularly scheduled meeting is December 23rd. I just want to toss out there, we could move it to the 30th, but I honestly don't know if that's any better. So I just want to make sure now while everyone's in the room, if we can make sure that we know what that next meeting makes sense and we can accommodate.
Yeah. Can we move it up a week? Is it available on the 16th?
Actually, I do think that that's probably okay. There's a chance instead of being in this room, we may be in the larger conference room at the end, but we'd still make sure that there was a remote, like recording on Zoom and stuff. So.
Would folks be available to make December 16th?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that reminder. All right then, may I have a motion to adjourn? A second?
Second.
Thank you.
Katie, I just wanted to make a comment. You really didn't need to apologize for this discussion. It was a discussion that had to be had.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for saying that.
Yeah.
All right, roll vote. Gabrielle?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
Katie, yes. Thank you, everyone. I'm very grateful.